Howdy from Texas. Dixie and Eric back again. We are going to talk about one of our favorite shoots, Magpul.
Yes. Oh, I love it. That's my favorite.
Since you started this whole thing from Magpul, tell us the story.
All right, I will do that. So, if you guys don't know, Magpul was one of my very first big commercial jobs. Up until that point, you know, I'd worked with I'd actually done one job before that, but that was Florsheim Shoes. But Magpul was basically that moment where I was like, okay, I've got to learn how to hire a team. And I had met Eric a few years prior, and I couldn't afford to hire him until we got this Magpul production, where we had the budget to basically have lighting and hair and makeup and wardrobe. And we had this amazing art director, Keely Wirtz, who's one of our good friends. She's a model, art director, and makeup artist. So she is the actual kind of brainstorm behind this entire shoot. So I called Eric, and then Nancy. Nancy was a producer that basically was introduced to us through Jeanette. She
Right.
had done some JCPenney stuff. And so we got together the whole entire team, and it became a really crazy, crazy 3 days. We spent probably 3 weeks in pre-production only. I guess tell them what Magpul is.
All right, Magpul.
That's kind of important for you guys to know.
Magpul is a company that started by making the magazine pulls for AR-15s and guns the military uses. And then that turned into a huge company, and now they make parts for guns, and we were going to shoot their calendar.
And the calendar's proceeds would basically go towards the Marine Reconnaissance Foundation to help families with injured soldiers.
Right.
So it was a really cool opportunity. And basically they wanted a high fashion calendar with all their equipment.
Yeah.
So we brought out the best A team in Dallas to pull this off, and we had to pull it off 12 shots in 3 days. So basically we had to have the production dialed, and we're going to talk about our team more in another video, but a producer basically creates the schedule. So we would do 4 shots a day, and they're all different, totally different location, different wardrobe, different models. Mm-hmm. So it was definitely a huge challenge. I can remember being so nervous, like this is my first big production. Did you know how nervous I was?
I had no idea.
Oh my gosh.
I thought you were actually relaxed because you were having fun.
Man.
I didn't realize that you were nervous.
Blast, but it was intense. And when you go into like a production like this, you have to go in fully confident. I think that's one of the biggest things when you go and shoot your first big production is just go in there owning it, pre-visualize the shoot before it happens. That pre-visualization really sets the tone for you getting into the shoot. Yeah, and as far as your prep work, you know, you help kind of when we scout the locations, you know, getting the lighting correct and figuring out what time of day to shoot everything. That's a huge... So we pre-produce everything.
Right. I look for that. When we location scout, first I look for areas to shoot, but then where the sun's going to hit at the best time in that location and where it is, because one of the locations was totally in the trees, so everything was green. So we had to know that was probably our best spot for backlit. Yes. Only because it's front lit, everything would just be so green and so bright, and the darkness of the leaves in the back would be almost black. We needed to figure out what the best time of day to shoot was. So
a good tool is the app that we use to see where the sun's gonna be at certain times of day. What is it called? The
Sunseeker? Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Download that. It's definitely a really great tool, especially when you're not able to scout the location at the right time that you want to shoot at. You can see where the sun will fall.
And you can program it to the right time of year too. So if you know you're going to be there next month, the Sunseeker app will tell you where the sun's going to be at that time. It's really important because you might be shooting in downtown or in an area where you don't have open sky. You have to find out exactly when that sun's going to come behind the building or behind the tree or hit the lake. And that's important because now all of a sudden you have 2 highlights. So you got to know, it's handy to have all that information up front so you can plan the shots. Then after that, Nancy, you can figure out which model is going to fly in, and it makes sense for which models to come first.
Yeah.
So the location scout is actually very important. So location scouting, basic stuff. You want to make sure there's enough parking for the crew. You want to make sure that there's areas to work in. Hair and makeup has a special area, a separate area. Styling has a separate area.
You have to make sure they have power.
Right.
Yes.
Both of them have to have separate power, and sometimes they need more than one circuit, meaning if you plug in 2 hair dryers in the same plug, you'll probably blow it. So you have to separate their power out. And then also for styling, because styling, when they use steamers, that steamer usually plugs into one plug, and that's it. If you want to plug in a second one, you have to go to another outlet outside the room probably and bring in a stinger to bring in power for that one. And also, so you definitely want to be able to know where, like for me, the snacks are. So you had to have a snack area where to.
We did decide food is your love language.
Right. Eating was my love language.
Eating, I mean, yeah. Gotta have lots of food on set for this one. I get hangry too when I'm not fed.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah, that's definitely very important.
Yeah, and we definitely want to know where to put the gear. And also, when we put gear down, do we need to put floor coverings? Whether it's ram board or a sound blanket or something to protect the floors. So location scouting, in terms of that, gives you the kind of it's a base to have you know where everything is. Then you can start planning from there.
Yeah.
So typically, what we'll do 3 or 4 locations.
And one thing to keep in mind when you're doing location scouting and scheduling of the shoot, if you're doing big moves, like say for instance we're shooting something in another area of town, you have to really consider the time that it takes to get a whole entire crew with all of the gear and do a whole big company move.
Right.
So like our first 2 days, we shot at like this one amazing house that had all these different variety. So we were able to really stay put there.
Yeah.
But then the last day of the first shoot, we ended up having to shoot in this garage, and then we had to go and shoot downtown and move this whole
And then that
grip
house,
truck.
right.
And so it was a lot of company moves. So it takes away from shooting time. So you definitely want to. How much time would you say for company moves, like to get all of our gear out of a location?
For our gear, the time you say camera wrap, it takes about an hour and a half to pack everything down and into the cars and wheels up.
Yeah.
And then same thing when you set up. I need about an hour to set the lights, but that's after we brought everything out of the trucks.
Yeah.
So about an hour and a half is about right.
Yeah.
To break down and to set up. And that's our gear. We typically get a small grip truck, and I typically have probably 3 or 4 guys with me.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot. But when you're alone, or if you have just one person, consider all those moves that when you cut camera, it takes some time, not only to get the gear out, you got to make the space back to where it was.
Right.
And move
so
all the
always
furniture back.
photograph the
Right.
space before you move furniture. That's a
Big key.
huge key.
Yeah.
We always do that to make sure, because you don't want the locations mad at you when you've
Misplaced something.
stuff.
Yeah. Or if something's broken, you can say, look, in the picture that I took before, it was already cracked.
Yes.
It'll save you. And it's a great tip right there.
Yeah. And I think we should talk about a couple of our favorite shots from that. So one of my favorites was the Alice in Wonderland shot of her with the checkerboard gun.
Oh, the one on the green.
Yes.
All right.
So there was this really interesting area where it was just a greenery, kind of like a...
It was AstroTurf.
It was AstroTurf, but it had these levels, and it was a big circle at the house.
It was...
It was so random.
It's hard to describe. It's like a...
Yeah, we'll put up a picture of it.
It's like giant round couches, but it's all AstroTurf.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
So it was super sunny while we had to do that. We had the model laying across the floor, and so you guys had to put up a 40 by.
We put up a 20 by.
Or 20 by,
We
sorry.
put a 20 by silk, and it was tricky because that round thing it barely supported our stands.
Yeah.
And then if you do that, you got to make sure you have the space for it. You got to make sure it's safe. We tied down.
How many guys to put one of those up?
Right, you had to have 4 people.
Yeah.
You really can't do it. You can do it with 2 if you're really experienced, but then you got to rope it down and everything. And if it's windy, you really got to. It's safer to do it with more people.
That
That was cool because the sun was basically high noon, and it looked terrible with just a bare sun. Yeah. So we put that over, and that was. I think that one might have been everything. We might have added one little light to it just to get something in the eyes. But she was wearing sunglasses, so I'm not sure if I even did that. We might have just pushed a little bit into it.
I think there was. I think we did have a strobe, just a B1 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Cool.
then we got to talk about the downtown shot. So
Dude,
the cover.
Yeah.
We saved the cover for the last shot, which was stressful because all of a sudden on the way to the location, we start seeing rain clouds. And this is the last shot of the day.
Yep.
And the last shot of the shoot, and we're like, oh gosh, this is not good, because we have a model that's going to wear a huge white fashion gown. She's going to be walking through the middle of downtown Dallas. We had to hire cops to
We had
block
4 cops to block the entire block.
Yes.
But it was an active street on Sunday, I think it was.
I thought it was on Friday.
It was?
I think, because I remember it being rush hour.
Oh man,
It was a crazy
I don't remember, but it was so busy
Yeah.
And so they had to block off maybe 1 minute sections that we had. And then they said, okay guys, we have to cut and you guys have to let
some cars
stop
through.
and then let the cars through, which was, kind of crazy because we put her in the middle of the street, right in between all 4 corners.
But we actually, that was after the rainstorm. So
Yeah.
we got to the location and we start putting out lights, and then all of a sudden it starts raining.
So
So
hard.
we had to move everything back into the grip truck, and then we had to get under cover, and then we're just hoping and praying that the rain
Right.
subsides in order for us to get out there and get the shot. But
So-
it was amazing because
Yeah.
it wet the street, which looked great.
It's funny because we probably spent an hour setting up.
Yeah.
And then in 5 minutes we had to break all of it back down and reset up. And then after the rain, but the rain was perfect because it actually cleaned everything.
Yeah, it looked
It was
amazing.
awesome.
Saved me a
So-
lot of Photoshop.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember we weren't there for that long, but
No,
all of a
it
sudden I
probably
looked.
took 15 minutes.
Yeah, I looked behind us and there's 100 people watching us.
Yeah.
And I was like, where'd you guys come from?
You're like, what is going on? Only
So,
in
but-
Dallas could you get away with a model walking through the middle of downtown
With a
Dallas.
machine gun, yeah. Wearing a big old white dress.
crazy
That
job.
was it. I still compare all of our jobs
Yeah, me
to
too.
Magpul.
That
Just
was
because
such good energy.
for me, Magpul means that we have complete freedom to play with whatever we want. And we had every piece of equipment we could possibly want. And we had the crew for it.
Yeah.
It was just like someone writing you a blank check and saying, here, have fun. And we did that
They
job was
really
so much
did.
fun.
They gave us pretty much creative freedom.
Right.
To just create, and Keely was really so important because we concepted every single shot, and then Jeanette Chivas was doing the styling,
Yep.
and she nailed the styling, and so it was like our whole team came together, and this whole creative, I don't know, all our creative juices were flowing.
Yeah.
It was just such an amazing gig.
It's one of those shoots that when you walk out the door one day, everything that happens to you that day is just awesome.
Yeah.
And some days, everything you touch just turns into, it's not into poop. But like that day, it was everything we touched, everything we did, it just worked. And it was so cool because we come up with some idea and somehow someone make it better and then better and then better and then we can
Yeah.
execute like that. It was so cool.
And that's, I think, different about, so a lot of creative crews or commercial crews, I feel like they are very, like the photographer isn't open to ideas. The way that I love working is I love hearing people's input because we can make what we're creating that much better. Like I love hearing your input on lighting and then, hair and makeup and everything. I love hearing those ideas because I feel like it just makes that shot that much better.
Yeah, and I try to do as much as I can to give you as many options as possible.
Yeah.
And after you tell me you love it, then I'm gonna tweak it a little bit more just to make sure that
You're
this is the
always
absolute
tweaking, just like me.
best on the the lighting's best in the model. And yeah, sometimes I'll keep tweaking until the end of the shot, but it's just usually pretty much little moves.
Yeah.
If it's something big, I'll always just whisper really lightly to Dixie, and I'll do it one time. That's it. I won't make the suggestion again because I know she's heard it. And after that, she'll be like, "Oh, great!" Or like, let's wait till after this shot, and we can figure it out.
Sometimes he does have to tap me on the shoulder
Yeah.
though, because sometimes I'm so engaged in what I'm doing with shooting and photographing the models that I literally don't hear anything. It's almost like this laser sharp focus that I have when I shoot. I'm like fully present in that moment. So
Right.
sometimes it takes tapping my shoulder to get me to,
Right.
respond.
And that's important. Like if you're working with a photographer,
Yeah.
you have to be their eyes, because their whole world is basically
Yeah,
in
it's
that
just very
it's a
small.
1 by 1 inch square. If they're looking at the back of the viewfinder, or in the LCD screen, that's all they have. They're not aware of anything else. So if something's dangerous, like we were shooting a lot of stuff for a ranching company, and there was a stampede going on. I was like, hey, let's move. And I'll physically move her. I'm like, we got to go right now. Just move 20 feet this way, get us out of the danger zone, and then you can come back.
Yeah,
but
or cars.
Yeah, because she's not going to be paying attention to everything, because she's looking at poses, the model, making sure the hair and makeup looks good. And for me as an assistant, I'm going to take a lot of that pressure off, hopefully.
You do.
And I can still contribute as well, you know, but do it in a quiet manner. Like, don't just say, hey, did she look better? She turned this way. Just say, hey, boss, maybe turn her head this way a couple times.
Exactly. That's such a big thing.
And then just hush, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Don't make the suggestion over and over, especially the same one. It's annoying.
Yeah. And then we also come up with some code words. So, for instance, if I'm working with a Digitech, and I always like have them check focus, that it's tack sharp on the eyes every time. So if it's not quite there, the Digitech will have him say check CF. So the client doesn't know ultimately check focus. When you say CF, they don't really know what, they just think you're talking crew talk. And it tells me that I need to really focus on my focusing.
Yeah, right.
And make sure, which, now that was before eye autofocus. Now the new Z's have the eye autofocus, which makes it super easy.
It's awesome.
But I think that's kind of sums it up. That was my most favorite job.
What's your favorite memory, Magpul?
Oh, what's my favorite memory? All of it. I would do that shoot over and over again.
Yeah,
It was so
what's
good.
mine? I don't know. That whole shoot, and then we did a couple more calendars for them. But man,
yeah, so we shot it for 3 different years. Yeah. And every year it was a little bit different. The first year was super high fashion. The second year was more Western.
Yep, that's right.
And then the third year was like military style. So lots of different styles, and it was
cool.
A blast.
All right.
I think that's a wrap on Magpul. We'll stay tuned, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
Take care.